I will share some slides that will help me tell the story of what we're up to at this little organization called the BioFi Project, which recently celebrated its 3-month anniversary of being born. It was launched on the summer solstice. So with the equinox, we're kind of looking back at this first quarter of our work and the response to the work, and really listening to what bioregional organizing teams around the world are asking of us and inviting us to support. And you said it well, Glenn, that we're focused on designing and creating financing facilities, a new type of institution that is based on living systems, patterns, and principles, and recognizing all the ways that our current financial architecture and economic systems are not in harmony with life and are not tapping into the intelligence of life. And I'm an economist by training. I have an undergrad and a graduate degree in economics, and have spent a lot of time working in the World Bank, so kind of these like legacy multilateral institutions. I was the secretary to the board of an American Chamber of Commerce in Singapore early in my career. I've worked in a lot of different parts of the global capitalist system, and have been trying to change it and listening to the rainforest. It was like my kind of initial teacher on this from a very young age, and have been looking at how do we reform and redesign the global financial architecture so that it serves life for a decade now. And all of that has led me to some ideas that I laid out in a book that I'm going to tell you a little bit about. So I'm sure most of you would agree that we currently find ourselves in this moment in human history in the midst of the sixth mass extinction, right? We see this all around us. Animals and insects and fungi that we loved when we were young are harder and harder to find. Billions of dollars are currently responding to this mass extinction through commitments to invest in nature, in regeneration. They are earmarked for these activities, but they are rarely flowing to the mycelial web of grassroots regenerative projects around the world. And this is something that I witnessed at my time at the World Bank. And certainly since I have spent more time with various regenerative land projects around the world since I moved to California a couple of years ago. And I saw the financing approaches that were being applied to allocate this capital perpetuating, and in some cases even deepening, the same extractive processes and power structures that I saw driving the crisis. And I was really disappointed with, nature-focused private equity funds that I was helping to build, gravitating away from supporting grassroots regenerative projects to investing in Western corporate land projects in the global South that were owned by companies in the global North. And something felt off. I felt like we needed to create a new type of financial institution. And so since then, I've been preaching what I have come to believe is the need to move beyond this notion of closing the nature finance gap. I'm in New York right now. I've been here for 2 weeks and just coming off of a very busy climate week here. And at most events you go to in New York during climate week, you will hear companies and multilaterals and investors talking about this nature finance gap and how we need to mobilize as much private capital as possible to invest in the regeneration of nature. And what I am suggesting, my provocation, is that closing a quantitative gap alone is not sufficient. Where those resources are spent, how that financing is structured, and who gets to make those decisions is as important as the quantum of capital. And in particular, how those resources support the transformation of systems, relationships, and worldviews will determine whether they are successful in addressing the ecological crisis and the broader polycrisis. We see a growing movement of organizations that is forming, that is working to connect financial resources to grassroots regenerators to catalyze the transition to living regenerative bioregional economies in the face of an unfolding polycrisis. So these communities are building networks of bioregional collaboration and solidarity. I'm in one right now with all of you. But these important regenerative projects and initiatives are often small scale, informal, and often structurally excluded from capital sources. And I believe that if financial resources are to drive the high integrity biocultural regeneration needed to fend off further collapse and deliver well-being for all, governance of financial resources will need to be decentralized, returning decision-making power to people living in deep relationship to place. And so it is with this provocation that we developed some concepts that we lay out in this book, Bioregional Financing Facilities, Reimagining Finance to Regenerate Our Planet, that came out on the solstice, the same day the BioFi Project was launched, and has created a bit of a stir in the bioregional movement and broader regenerative finance, regenerative economics movements. And the book lays out a new layer in the global financial architecture of bioregional financing facilities. And we lay out templates for 4 bioregional financing facilities in the book that I will speak to shortly. But these financing facilities essentially serve as a layer of intermediaries or connective tissue between increasingly concentrated pools of financial capital that are rooted in abstraction and separation from place, and the amazing mycelial web of regeneration that is happening all over the world, but is often kind of under the soil and unseen. And we don't always understand the connections between those projects. And certainly the capital sitting in New York, where I am right now, or London, or DC, or Tokyo, doesn't see those networks and is not well positioned to effectively allocate capital to the projects that are the highest leverage points. So bioregional financing facilities have 3 objectives to, as I said earlier, drive the decentralization of financial resource governance, noting the problems in a centralized financial system in supporting regeneration. They organize synergistic portfolios of projects. So from the capital holder's perspective, these projects are often too small and not ready for their investment, but bioregional financing facilities can bring together aggregated portfolios of projects that together become greater than the sum of their parts. And they catalyze the transition to a regenerative economy. So we're not looking at investments in isolation or in terms of just the returns that they can generate, but we're looking at how every single investment is catalyzing the transition to an economy that is more sovereign, more place-based, more resilient, more regenerative, and more in alignment with the living systems, patterns, and principles of the place that bioregional financing facility is set up to serve. They have 12 attributes that we lay out in the book. They aim to align with living systems principles, as I've said, and really drew on Fridtjof Capra's work and continuing to do so for this. So, looking at the physics of living systems. And they are in service to Indigenous wisdom. And it's important to note that by this, we mean place-based Indigenous wisdom. So the book doesn't lay out, what is Indigenous wisdom. The book says, finance should be in service to Indigenous wisdom in a given place. And it's up to the bioregional organizing team in a given place to build relationships with the Indigenous communities there and to surface what that wisdom is, what those principles of right relationship are, and to structure a financing facility that is in alignment with that. Bioregional financing facilities serve a long-term bioregional regeneration strategy, something I'd love to learn from this community more about how you're thinking about this. But it's been my experience that short-term thinking often creates conflict or lack of coherence in a place about what priority regenerative activities are. But if we start to think at the 20, 50, or 100-year time scale, our interests and our visions for what regeneration looks like, what we want our bioregion to feel like, converge. So in the book, we recommend this kind of long-term envisioning and a participatory process to develop a bioregional regeneration strategy. And I've really been enjoying having conversations with Lawrence and team about the 100-year vision for the Bay Delta bioregion. Third is that bioregional financing facilities implement an inclusive and participatory governance structure that represents the bioregion. So just like really recognizing the collective intelligence in a place and the collective intelligence that we can tap into if we bring a diversity of perspectives and backgrounds into the envisioning and the structuring of a bioregional financing facility. Fourth is that they work to shift power imbalances, something that I realized a few years ago needed to be central to all of my work if it was going to be impactful, and that, so many initiatives and programs masquerading as transformative are often deepening existing power imbalances rather than shifting power to the most marginalized communities. And certainly here I'm taking an animist perspective and thinking about all of the more than human life that has been totally left out of our decision making or how capital is allocated. Fifth is that they are transparent and enable empowered participation. You'll hear in a lot of these multilateral or national containers that communities aren't ready to receive these resources, and that flowing resources to the communities could enable corruption. And I am challenging that by saying, we can build processes that enable transparency and accountability and can track how those resources flow. And we can empower individuals in the community to ensure that that accountability is held. And it doesn't need to be in a top-down way, but in a bottom-up way. We can track how those resources are generating impact. It can leverage an integrated capital structure that embeds regenerative principles. So here we're kind of challenging the way philanthropy is very separate from investment in most family offices and asset managers, and really recommending a blending of these capitals and deploying return-seeking investment capital where it can generate the greatest impact and regenerative benefits. But bringing grant capital where we need that to invest in expanding and deepening the commons and accelerating organizations that need to get further along before they're ready to take a loan or an equity investment. Seventh is that they treat growth and returns as a means, but not an end. And here I'm really pointing to the capital supremacy and market fundamentalism that are so central in our global monoculture economic system right now, where returns, financial returns, even for people that have more money than they could ever use in their entire life, that is their North Star. So how do we move beyond that to look at a holistic portfolio of returns, inspiration, social, ecological, broader economic returns, and financial returns and growth of an organization can contribute to that, but are not the central goal. bioregional financing facilities raise from purpose-aligned funders and investors. So here I'm saying, let's not design something that meets the needs of capital providers within the boundaries of their current thinking and, modern portfolio theory and neoclassical economics and all the limitations in that. But let's work with funders and investors that are waking up to the need to take a more systems, design informed approach to how they invest and acknowledge that investing in broader returns is something that they want to do. They provide aggregation and matchmaking. I spoke to this already, aggregating these portfolios of projects and matchmaking them with the right funders or investors. They apply an integrated approach to sensing in an MRV, something that I would love to talk to this crew about, but we're looking at active inference, AI, and satellite technology, and eDNA and bioacoustics and all the coolest tech tools that can help us to sense how a project, how a landscape, how a watershed, how a bioregion is transforming as a result of these investments. But how do we also integrate it with Indigenous sensing of what is happening in the landscape and all the qualitative metrics that technology can't share with us, and how do we truly braid those together in an integrated way? That's something that we're planning on applying. Bioregional financing facilities invest in storytelling. We believe that storytelling about the need to reform economic systems, but also about what's happening in a bioregion, are really important components of this work. And they engage in partnerships and place-based citizen stewardship. So we have this vision that investors in bioregional financing facilities will partake in ritual and ceremony and land stewardship practices in the bioregion that they're investing in, and really come into relationship with that place in a deeper way. So there are 4 bioregional financing facilities, which I'll just go through quickly because I want us to have some time for Q&A. The Bioregional Trust essentially serves as a catalytic grant facility, and there are many different innovative building blocks that can be included under the Bioregional Trust, like a common asset trust, which holds a particular ecosystem in a commons, an ecological institution, which can give an ecosystem or a body of nature its own wallet, its own contracts that it holds in a DAO. And this is something we're working with the Regen Foundation on. It can hold a community governed grant pool where communities use tools like quadratic funding to allocate capital to projects that are a priority for them, and it can invest in acceleration of businesses that then maybe are incubated under the Bioregional Venture Studio. And the Bioregional Venture Studio will work with cohorts of entrepreneurs focused on shifting a particular system in the bioregion, and can apply a variety of funding approaches, including, providing grants, technical assistance, low interest loans, equity investment, revenue sharing agreements. But that's really taking a systemic approach to business incubation and how those businesses are working together. The Bioregional Investment Company then invests in systemic portfolios of projects that are generating a return. But we're taking, again, a systems design ecosystemic approach to how those portfolios are structured. And, this would be a variety of regenerative organizations in the bioregion. And then the Bioregional Bank functions similar to a community development financial institution, provides low interest loans, technical assistance, lines of credit, and we are also playing with potentially designing complementary currencies that are aligned with regenerative principles and living systems patterns in a bioregion that the Bioregional Bank could issue and manage. So as I mentioned earlier, bioregional financing facilities fund for returns. We borrowed the Common Land for Returns framework that starts with inspiration, right? Everything flows from inspiration and then moves into ecological healing, social healing and regeneration, and then financial and economic returns flowing last. So the BioFi Project is a collective supporting bioregions now to design, build, and implement these bioregional financing facilities. Here is our team of 14 that is bringing these bioregional financing facilities to life. And since the BioFi Project launch, we've received 43 applications from bioregions around the world interested in working with us to create these facilities. We're interviewing somewhere between 10 and 15 of those bioregions and are learning so much through that interview process. We have an interview with Glenn on the Casco Bay bioregion later today. I'm excited, Glenn, we get a couple of interactions today. And yeah, we're through those interview processes, listening to how we can best be of support to different bioregions and what their funding needs are, what their storytelling needs are, what their legal needs are, and how we can be good allies for them. And the BioFi Project has raised a couple of grants that allows us to go, be of service to these bioregions, be partners with them, help walk beside them as we design a bioregional financing facility, figure out the assets in a bioregion, how to grow those assets, how we would capitalize a bioregional financing facility, what is the legal and governance structure, and then start to implement it. And we are sharing all of these practices in our community practice that we learn through this prototyping phase. We are, of course, sharing the BioFi philosophy, spreading the BioFi meme, as it were. That's what I'm doing here with you today. We're hosting events. We're really trying to build a movement. We do not want to be a bottleneck and be the only entity that is working on bioregional financing facilities. We want this book to catalyze a million flowers blooming. And so that is what we're trying to do, particularly with this community of practice, which is, I think, up to like 330 people now. We're hosting twice monthly calls there. One that is a field building call where we have different bioregional initiatives come and present what they're up to, where they need support, how they've been playing with finance and financial flows in their bioregions so far. And then also in that space, they can ask for support from the BioFi Project team and from the broader community. And then our other call that we do every month is our BioFi Deep Dive call, where we deep dive into a particular aspect of BioFi that's covered in the book, or we bring in one of our technical partners to talk about something like eco credits or donor advised funds, different kinds of building blocks that can be used in a bioregion. So would love to see some of you there in those calls. We, as I mentioned, are starting some prototype bioregional financing facilities. We're building this network of amazing technical partners and funders and investors that are interested in investing in bioregional financing facilities. We're providing strategic advisory to family offices, foundations, investors that want to take a bioregional approach to how they're working. And we're hosting a BioFi Venture Studio where we're going to be incubating organizations that can serve the overall BioFi and bioregional movement and build tools and protocols that are supporting the entire movement. And here is a slide with some of our partners. There are many of them, and I'm sure you all probably recognize a lot of the organizations here, and we really are, learning with them, from them, and building this together with them. And yeah, with that, just want to invite all of you into this work with us. And in the spirit of radical collaboration, we invite your thoughts, feedback, reflections, questions, invitations for how we might better work together.